Good morning, this is Marshall Davis. This is the 10th saying in the Gospel of Thomas. Jesus said, "I have cast fire upon the world, and look, I am guarding it until it blazes." Another translation puts it slightly differently. "I have thrown fire upon the world, and look, I am watching until it blazes." This is another saying in Thomas that has parallels in the Synoptic Gospels. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus says, "I have come to bring fire on the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled." That's similar, but not exactly the same. Now, what does this saying in the Gospel of Thomas mean? To correctly interpret this passage in the Gospel of Thomas, we need to see what fire means in the Gospel of Thomas. The word is used 4 times in this Gospel. It is used first in our verse. 3 verses later, Jesus takes Thomas aside and speaks to him privately, and the other apostles want to know what Jesus said to him. And Thomas replies, "If I tell you one of the sayings he spoke to me, you will pick up rocks and stone me, and fire will come from the rocks and devour you." So here, fire is a means of destruction. 3 more verses later, Jesus says, "Perhaps people think that I have come to cast peace on the world. They do not know that I have come to cast conflicts upon the earth. Fire, sword, war." So here it's not only destruction, but it's the conflicts that accompany it. That's very similar to what Jesus says in the Gospel of Luke in that parallel verse. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus says he came to bring fire on the earth, and then he continues, saying, "Do you think I came to bring peace on earth? No, I tell you, but division." The last time Jesus used the word fire in the Gospel of Thomas, he says, "Whoever is near me is near the fire, and whoever is far from me is far from the kingdom." So Jesus equates his presence with fire and with the kingdom of God. So, in the Gospel of Thomas, fire seems to be about 3 things. It's about the presence of the kingdom of God, which brings about destruction, and also conflicts or division. So let's look at this more closely. Jesus says, "I have cast fire upon the world, and look, I am guarding it until it blazes." Now, we have seen a lot of fires in our country, in California, recently. Here in New Hampshire, this winter, like every winter, you hear about and you read in the news about houses that catch on fire because people are trying to keep warm in the winter. Earlier this winter, I had my chimney inspected like I always do and cleaned. And they saw there was a crack in the lining, so I had to have it relined to prevent a chimney fire, which can be very dangerous here where we burn wood for heat. So fire is a symbol of destruction, and yet that destruction also is purification. They go together in biblical imagery. The prophet Malachi says about the day of the Lord, "Who can endure the day of his coming? Who can stand when he appears? For he will be like a refiner's fire or a launderer's soap." The first letter of Peter talks about the trials that we endure and says, "These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes, even though refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed." It is reasonable to think that destruction and purification are double aspects of fire in the Gospel of Thomas. It's very similar to the metaphor of death and resurrection. Forest fires are followed by a resurrection of the forest. Years ago, we took a family trip to Yellowstone National Park, and it was shortly after the forest fires that caused lots of destruction there. But already we could see signs of life resurrecting from the ashes. Spiritual awakening is fire. The world as we know it is consumed as if by fire. I immediately think of Blaise Pascal's spiritual awakening, which is called The Night of Fire. He wrote a brief account of it, and it was so important to him that he sewed it into his jacket. And when his jacket wore out, he took it out and he sewed it into the new jacket, so it would always be near his heart. They found it after he died. In that account, after giving the date in 1654, he writes this: fire, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, not of the philosophers and of the learned. Certitude, feeling, joy, peace. God of Jesus Christ, my God and your God. Your God will be my God. Forgetfulness of the world and of everything except God. Spiritual awakening is a destruction of our world, and yet at the same time that destruction also reveals the real world, the kingdom of God. That's certainly true in my life. As I deconstructed my Christianity, it felt like everything that I knew and loved was being destroyed. Yet when everything was gone, what remained was the real. When everything is destroyed, that which cannot be destroyed is revealed. In the canonical Gospels, the parallel passages are connected to an apocalyptic end of the world. And Christians take that literally. They believe that the earth and history will literally come to an end. And in a sense, it does, but just not in the way that most Christians think. The world as we know it comes to an end in spiritual awakening. Adyashanti wrote a book entitled The End of Your World, subtitled Uncensored Straight Talk on the Nature of Enlightenment. That's what Jesus was talking about in our passage when he said, I have cast fire on the world, and look, I am guarding it until it blazes. His teaching ignites a fire under the illusion of the world. And that began in his earthly ministry. And that is why it says in the Gospel of Thomas that he has already cast fire upon the world and is guarding it, or watching it until it blazes. That is a different phrasing than what we find in the Gospel of Luke, where Jesus says, I have come to bring fire on the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. You see, in Luke's Gospel, it's not yet kindled. That kindling happened sometime in the future in some type of apocalyptic event. That is because the New Testament gospel writers bought into the apocalyptic worldview that was popular from the 2nd century BC right up through the 1st century AD. They saw the end of the world as a cataclysmic historical event. It is actually a spiritual event that happens here and now when we wake up from the old world to something that is entirely different. And that happens in every generation. Spiritual awakening is the destruction of the old self, the little self, the false self, the ego. That psychological self created this world that we think we live in. When the psyche comes crashing down, so does the world that it created. And then we see reality. But when we try to communicate that reality to others, people won't believe it. They do not like it, because it means the end of the world. And it means the end of their religion as they knew it. So they attacked the messenger. That's exactly what happened to Jesus. It happens in the church today. Conservative Christians are my fiercest critics because the message of non-duality destroys their religion. It invalidates their worldview, and they are fiercely wedded to what they call the Christian worldview. In spiritual awakening, all worldviews, including the Christian worldview, collapse because they're all products of the human mind. The fire of awakening is destruction that exposes reality as it really is. Spiritual awakening is not a one-time event. And that is why Jesus says in this verse that he not only ignites the fire, but he watches it. He says, look, I am guarding it until it blazes, or I am watching the fire. This fire of awakening is an ongoing process that we can watch unfold. Now, it may, and often does, begin dramatically with an experience that can be dated, like Blaise Pascal's Night of Fire. I can date the beginning of awakening to a summer day in 2012. This shift in awareness can dramatically occur at a particular date, but it continues for the rest of our lives. A seedling breaks through the surface of the ground into the sunlight on one particular day, but that's not the end of the story. It's just the beginning. The plant continues to grow and produce a harvest, like we saw last time in Thomas's version of the parable of the sower. Jesus ignited the fire of awakening in his teaching ministry, where he proclaimed the non-dual kingdom of God, and that was perceived as a destructive message. The ruling religious and political class rightly were afraid of his message because it caused division in society of his day. So the political religious leaders decided to get rid of this dangerous character. So they executed him. But of course they could not destroy that which cannot be destroyed, which was his message and the reality that he incarnated and represented. So the eternal Christ remains. And whoever gets near Christ, the real Jesus and not the fake one of cultural Christianity, gets near the fire and near the kingdom. And if we are lucky, if we are recipients of divine grace, then our lives burn away and only the reality that we call the kingdom of heaven remains. And that is it for today. Grace and peace to you.